All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Maddie Hyatt, and I'm a part of RKON's business development team. First, I want to thank you all for joining today. And second, we ask that you refrain from asking any questions during the presentation. And now I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, RKON CEO, Jeff Malecki.
Thanks, Maddie. Today we're going to walk through a number of slides, and we're going to start with the common challenges around compliance that most organizations are having. We're privy to a lot of industry information, surveys, and what our client base tells us. So we've summarized a lot of that into some slides. We're going to walk through how those challenges relate to different data center hosting and cloud options. Every option has a different positive and negative. We're going to walk through that in detail. And then we're going to finally walk through how we've solved these things, how we built our cloud, and how we're able to offer a low-cost, compliant-ready cloud. So we're going to go ahead and dive in so we can make sure we hit our 30-minute times. And at the end, we're going to do a brief demo on some of our SOC stuff. I think after that, we won't be taking questions, but we'll have time for follow-up calls immediately after this if anybody has any questions or wants to dig in a little bit more. RKON provides IT advisory and management for hundreds of clients who have either software as a service offerings or at a minimum have a tech-enabled business model. And working with the executive leadership of these organizations, the one common theme we hear is compliance and cybersecurity are now a strategic part of the business strategy. Yet, in spite of all the advances in security technology and ready-made cloud options, these tech-enabled business models are struggling with IT security and compliance to the point where most are reporting they're worse off today than they were 2 years ago, that they're losing ground and are experiencing direct financial impact, including internal turmoil. So the common themes we hear are as follows. To begin with, IT compliance is now a standard part of client vendor RFPs for doing business. So they're going to sell a product to a new customer. They often have to fill out vendor RFPs, and the market's reporting significant customer revenue loss by not fulfilling standard vendor compliance requirements compared to the competition. Essentially, they're saying that IT is becoming the enemy of sales. They're actually preventing them from getting deals. Number two, many industries have gone from compliance goals to compliance requirements, threatening the viability of doing business. Compliance is evolving and misunderstood often, and it results in continuous cost and budget surprises. So CFOs are reporting continuous unplanned budget surprises to pay security and compliant projects, impacting their ability to provide accurate earnings and budgets to key stakeholders. Essentially, IT is now becoming the enemy of financial leadership. And competition to develop a competitive advantage through technology is really putting a strain on traditional product development methodologies. Compliance is pushing that ability over the edge. Clients are reporting that product development release cycle costs and timelines are skyrocketing due to excessive compliance controls, governance, and compatibility challenges. So IT is now becoming the enemy of product development, and product development is obviously part of IT. All of this is resulting in valuations are being directly impacted by a firm's ability to provide adequate, efficient, cost-effective compliance. So in summary, tech-enabled business models are spending significantly more money on compliance that's often unplanned while delivering poor results impacting customer revenue, business operations, and product development, and ultimately investor valuation. It's a big issue. So why is cost-effective, timely cybersecurity compliance so difficult to achieve? Now, successful cybersecurity compliance would be easy if there was unlimited time or unlimited budgets. The challenge is being successful within budgets on time. Many organizations think this can't be this hard. It must be my team. But the truth is everybody struggles with compliance and cybersecurity at some level, regardless of their IT hosting and infrastructure strategy. I think everybody would agree that some of the basic reasons are obvious. Security threats and compliance are evolving and moving target. Security technologies are changing all the time in response. But the most important yet subtle root causes are less visible. Number one, compliance has to retrofit into the enterprise. Compliance standards are pretty inflexible, which means the foundation often has to change versus the add-ons. Adding a security control or compliance zone is often like adding a roof to a home, except the foundation has to be reset to match it. Number two, it's likely the original foundation of your IT footprint is now considered flawed years later from a compliance and security standpoint. Compliance often lose years of time while spending millions of dollars trying to retrofit IT in the hopes they can turn an IT apple into a compliant orange. Limiting the scope of compliance to a smaller set of assets is a really good example. Most enterprises and clouds weren't designed up front for easy segmentation. You either have to redo the whole enterprise or apply expensive security controls to everything. Just costs some time. Number three, complexity. Security is more complex than the rest of the enterprise combined. It's not just complex technology that has to function as governance across all technologies. The real complexity comes from the fact that these tools have to work in a defined process by people that need to follow a distinct procedure in order to prove compliance has been achieved. Many compliance standards, number four, are achieved by process, which means you have to modify behavior. And we all know people are historically bad at taking direction. So security is not just a set of tools, it's a methodology for how you run IT. It affects the way you configure, manage, and change non-security elements of the enterprise as well. Number five, compliance requires a delicate balance, highly dependent on every person, process, and technology, reliably operating in a consistent, integrated way, derailed easily by a failed technology, a failed process, or employee turnover. All of these are true for service providers, cloud providers, and in-house. Nobody's immune, which is why big public cloud providers tend to shy away from getting involved with security controls and comprehensive compliance. And as we have found, good IT decision-making is counterintuitive, and it's easy to make a bunch of reasonably small decisions that add up to a very bad high-cost strategy. This is a summary of the different IT data center strategies and how compliance is impacted. We're going to walk through all the different strategies and what's good about them, what's bad about them. The one thing we found was that our clients often had bounced from one strategy to another. One thing that didn't work to another didn't work for a different reason. And I think walking through out of the pan into the fire scenarios is very valuable for clients, because sometimes based on their profile, it doesn't matter or it does matter. And this is a summary of what we found along the way for these. And the first one is in-house IT. What we have found in our cost analysis and speed execution is it really is the highest cost and the slowest method. But there are very good reasons why people do it in-house, and a lot, and we'll dig into that. A lot of that comes down to a lack of options in the market, forces organizations to continue doing it on their own, even when they don't have the economies of scale and depth to do it correctly. They have no choice. Public cloud options, very common. A lot of people rush to it. We'll dig into those. They can be lower cost in some cases, not all, but we found that they're equally slow in execution. We'll get into why that ends up being that case. Private cloud, faster execution and but also higher costs. And finally, we'll go through and talk about how RKON has found the balance between speed and costs and how our next gen compliant ready cloud achieves these goals. Not a good fit for everybody, but a great fit when we are a great fit. Let's start with the analysis of timelines that it takes to add security and compliance controls all the way through testing and compliance. Keep in mind that not everybody's experience will be the same. The following is a summary of our findings and our client feedback. Not all the private clouds are the same, but quality private cloud vendors will typically provide security management and infrastructure management and the infrastructure combined. They should already have a history of compliance certified clients. They should already have security standards they know will work. They should be using standardized scripts for implementing and configuring along with mature processes and reporting that shortcut the process significantly. The challenge in a private cloud world is they're typically building an instance for use. So there's still an order, provision, implementation, rollout phase that often can take a few months to complete. The certification process will likely be shorter than normal, assuming they have other clients with similar needs. We find generally it takes about 3 to 5 months for them from start to finish. Let's look at in-house. In-house is going to take about 3 or 4 months to do research, proof of concept design, testing, vendor RFP selection, and procurement. They're going to spend a similar amount of time on average implementing and training, documenting, while they spend another several months remediating and getting certification remediation, which also often takes several expensive cycles. It's often that this could take 10 to 12 months, and as we're going to go into later, it can take significantly longer. In-house has generally the toughest time because they don't have the economy scales of managed cloud providers, so they typically have to handle these things with a limited staff. Public clients surprisingly report that it's a similar time frame as in-house once you go outside the standard inadequate tools provided out of the gate by those providers. The hidden challenge in most large public clouds is that the customer is still responsible to choose the tools, configure, manage, and certify. So large public clouds advertise they're certified often, but what most companies don't realize is this is limited to a small portion of the stack that's under the cloud provider's control and not the same as the customer certification that includes tool configurations, processes, tracking, and the people, which, by the way, is the most complex part and the reason in-house struggles as well. We see many clients going to public clouds from in-house operations only to find they still have all the complexity, but now they're actually working in somebody else's environment. And we see often that it can take 8 to 10 months. We've heard many stories of it a lot quicker, but because in public clouds, you're still providing the management and the tools, it can take a long time. Finally, and we'll dig into this a little bit later, but RKON routinely provides its clients with a platform that already has these tools integrated and built. So it's just a matter of turning on those switches and allocating those resources and getting certified. Our process, our change process for turning tools on is a 1 or 2 day routine. We'll dig into how we accomplish this later, but really the certification process starts almost immediately. So let's go through one by one the positives and the common complaints we hear about each model. Private clouds are typically dedicated builds, so they have an inherent higher level of security than a standard public cloud. Since they usually provide outsourced labor and mature processes, organizations can get out of operations and management and focus on their core business. And this often will simplify certification as well. Common complaints can be significant depending on how customized the applications are. To begin with, they usually lack expertise in key technologies that are more common with legacy applications, but not necessarily. Things like Citrix, F5, load balancing, those type of things. They just don't have those expertise. Because everything is a 3-year contract, they lack dial-up and dial-down demand. So they lack flexibility in a changing environment. And 3 years kind of gets applied to everything regardless of when it's added. You want to add a security control a year down the line, you're going to get a 3-year contract, so now the whole thing gets extended. And this is the way they lock people in. So think about it. Dynamic business models need a dial-up, dial-down solution, which is why the public cloud is so great. But to preserve costs and get out of that, in case of a change in compliance landscape, you're just kind of stuck with those changes long-term regardless. Less important are higher costs of security tools that often have to get applied to the entire environment. Part of what we preach is that limit the scope of your compliance as much as possible and only apply the tools to those things. Private clouds have a very difficult time actually pulling that off. And in addition, they lack flexibility. You have to run with their approved versions of OSs, again, making legacy difficult to impossible. And you have to work off of their change control schedule, regardless of what your requirements are or your client's requirements. The other thing is they're not multi-tenant, so any redundancy you get is really what you pay for. So if you want more redundancy, you double the cost of it. And DR is exceptionally expensive in those environments. Traditional in-house IT, in many cases, ends up being the only choice tech-enabled business models have due to a lack of support for customer legacy applications. Now, this is kind of a defining reason why people end up doing things in-house. And sometimes they do a great job. If they have the economies of scale, they're lucky to have enough staff. That for sure happens a lot. But this is the reason why they can't get out of that business. Public cloud, private cloud, there's just very limited options. Other positives include flexibility and tool sets. Since you control the environment, you can dictate change control, release schedules to your customer base, and of course the perception of control. Common complaints really start with 24/7 operational strain on staff. People want to go home and sleep. Time and costs. There's a report done recently that showed 35% of projects, and more specifically security projects, take twice as long as expected and cost twice as much. Which can have obviously a big impact. So the other thing is 40% of new security projects are abandoned within 24 months, and 40% of those that get redone are abandoned again in 24 months. We used to run a seminar called Why Your Last SIM Was a Failure, just because of the number of failed projects in security. It's tough stuff, it really is. The other issue is you're stuck in a 5-year depreciation cycle, typically 3 to 5 years. So once you buy it, organizations tend to stretch those things out. They're stuck with them for a long time. So even if you abandon something, you're still on a depreciation cycle. You don't need any more, you're on a depreciation cycle. There's really very, very limited ability to get rid of technologies once you've written the check, whether you use them or not. And whether you shrink, you outsource, you push a legacy application to a different option, you're still stuck. Obviously the risk, turnover, everybody has turnover, but organizations that have limited staff, turnover disrupts operations more so than a large provider, including training, hiring, reworking into a proprietary system, and of course cost, time, and risk. DIY typically requires 2 or 3 audit remediation cycles for compliance and certification in general. So for the public cloud, the positives are obvious. There's no contract typically. There's dial up, dial down on core services, and they have name brand recognition. They own the majority portion of the market. They're easy in, great for flexible, moving, dynamic businesses that are expanding and contracting. The cloud can modify to that cost. So those are great things, and the reason why so many people rush to public clouds to begin with. But a lot of people are moving away. We've seen failure rates 50-60% on more strategic, complex applications. And the common complaints are, to begin with, staffing. Again, you're still on the hook for 24/7 strain on staff. DIY, do-it-yourself labor. Essentially, you're providing all the labor in most of the management. So we're now seeing that the labor portion of the IT stack is reaching around 50%. That didn't used to be the case. Equipment costs are reducing as a percentage of the overall. All the electricity and labor are going up, so now no longer the giant cost savings with going public cloud, relatively speaking. The outages can be excessive. Their SLAs are pretty weak. They provide up to 80 hours of outages, and even then you only get minor credit. They're getting better and better, but there's no guarantees on their SLAs for the most part. Security controls are broad, so if you They come with very few security controls. If you need some, you're actually back to buying them on their online stores, and you're back to 5-year cycles, or you're doing 3-year contracts. Either way, you lose the dial up, dial down significance on those. The pricing's misleading. So this is a common complaint. Big servers especially, beefy, heavy, high-powered servers, and a lot of their models often cost 300% more than people expected out of the gate. Again, they use templates, so legacy applications. If you're not up to speed on OS versions, for whatever reason, you're going to struggle working in these environments, and you're going to end up with part of your footprint in a public cloud and still managing part of it at home. Change control and flexibility, they're going to do it when they want to do it, not when you need it. And invoices are so complex that it's very difficult to cost out what your technology cost is. So software as a service providers are struggling trying to figure out which assets go with which application and how to manage through that process. Before getting into the detail behind RKON's compliance approach, let's start with an overview of our next-gen cloud architecture and what makes it different. RKON started managing security perimeters for the Fortune 2000 over 20 years ago. In that time, we evolved a cloud offering in response to client needs that were unfulfilled by standard market options, especially for IT-intensive, tech-enabled business models and SaaS providers requiring flexible, high-performance environments with complex security and compliance requirements. RKON Cloud is purpose-built for this difficult market and started with building our cloud in Zayo data centers, who together we've delivered an unbelievable 99.998 uptime over the last 8 years. RKON's next-gen cloud is a result of taking the best elements of our competitors without the downside. Our cloud is multi-tenant, so you can scale up and scale down, but it's a private cloud, so it doesn't have the inherent security flaws that public clouds have. It was built and designed by security architects who created security zones of pre-built technology stacks run by our world-class SOC, putting us far above the security capabilities of standard private cloud. The result is RKON's clients have never experienced a security breach, not even ransomware. In addition, our application delivery architects built a flexible platform that will accept any application as is. There are no templates, no upgrades necessary. Whatever runs in your enterprise will work with no modifications on our cloud. We can even accommodate applications that run on physical servers and specialty technologies like Citrix or F5 are core competencies of the RKON engineering team. Our secret sauce is we designed security and application delivery as the foundation and then wrapped everything else around it. By starting with the most complex, we simplified everything else. After years of providing managed security advisement services for our clients, we realized that 95% of all compliance standards use the exact same controls and process requirements. Yes, there's reporting nuances that require a specific template, and there are client requirements that are unique, but at the core is the standard set of tools that are common to all compliance. This allowed RKON to build a cost-effective, repeatable solution. And since we provide SOC and managed services for the cloud, it allowed us to wrap mature processes and reporting around it to deliver a compliance stack. As you can see, here's our standard security zones and how controls are allocated. From the top is network management tools, then threat management, identity and access management, vulnerability management, security incident management. As you can see across the zones, from standard to compliant, each area has a depth of tools based on requirements. The key is that from the standardized stack, RKON has developed an architecture that allows us to apply those controls by asset only where they're necessary. The real magic in this design is that it allows our clients to secure most of their assets with standard lower cost security controls, while enabling them to limit heavy security compliance requirements to be applied only the assets require them. So usually a smaller subset will go in an enhanced security zone. And finally, the set that's within the compliance will go in the compliance zone. Yes, these are increasing costs based on the controls, but now we've narrowed the focus for compliance, delivering a net lower cost. The real nice thing is these are on demand. We can turn these off and on as compliance requirements change. You have a legacy application that you're managing, developing today, maybe your ERP, and you want to send it to the cloud for another service. These are things that can be disabled on the fly. So the changes to these controls literally can be applied instantly. There's no excessive planning. We can turn these things on and develop policies while you're under compliance. So we don't leave it up to our clients to manage and configure these complex tools. We take ownership, including working with the auditors or potential clients to educate them on the strength of the security platform. So the summary of our turnkey solution, we've done hundreds of migrations with no unexpected outages. And our average time of a migration from your current data center to ours is around 90 days. One data center operation, one service provider, single source of accountability. This is about turning switches on that already exist versus building, creating, staffing. 99.998 uptime for the last 8 years. As is compatibility, all legacy applications will work as is. Citrix F5 checkpoint ready stack. Custom change control timeframes. Security can be applied by asset to keep the cost down, matching the scope of compliance. DR can be applied by server, keeping costs down with near zero RTO, RPO. Flexible contracts allowing scale up and scale down in the asset mix, and below industry benchmark cost structures. And these are some of our tech-enabled and compliance references for an example. The next thing we're going to do is tee up Ryan. He's got a demo that he's going to walk through for our SOC. Just to give you a sample, not only do we provide these services from a cloud standpoint, but we actually do our full security stack for premise-based clients that actually want to manage their own cloud, but they want to outsource security. So that's a core competency as well. But I'm going to let Ryan kind of walk through a little bit of our demo, and then I'm going to hand it back to Maddie at the end.
Today, we're going to take a quick look at one of RKON's SIM solutions. SIM is a critical component for compliance, but also best practice for any environment or infrastructure. SIM consists of many notable technologies such as user behavior analytics, attacker behavior analytics, endpoint detection and visibility, deception technologies, centralized log management, and many other threat intelligence and management functions. So let's look at this environment. This is your typical environment, 80 domain infrastructure, many Windows and Linux servers, switches, firewalls, VPN, IPS, IDS, cloud services, so 365, and many more tied into this SIM. So if we look at this dashboard, we have a lot of good metrics right at our fingertips. We have users ranked by risky, alerts by attack chain, ingress locations, cloud services, investigations, riskiest alerts, recently created alerts, recently accessed investigations. Now, it's important for any security team or administrator to be able to access alerts and correlate events in a timely manner. So let's look at alerts by attack chain. We have 5 total. We have 2 infiltration and persistence, 1 reconnaissance, and 2 lateral movements. So let's drill down into these alerts and see what we can see. So we can clearly see the date stamp of when the alert was first seen, when the investigation was auto-created, and last accessed. We can drill down even more to provide evidence. From here, we can see source and destination, who try to do attempt access, and so forth. We can also export for records and for the investigation. Another key component for any good log management in the SIM is log search. Sir.
Well, we lost Ryan on that.
All right, well, that concludes our webinar for today. Thanks again for joining. I know some of you may have some questions or might want to dive deeper into some of the topics that we went over. If you would like to set up an exploratory call with our team, we actually have some time slots open immediately after this call or later this afternoon. Or if sometime this week would work better for you, just please email me directly at mh